All right, so we're getting somewhere. We're writing our use get data hook, and then we're going to make our delete function, which should be, the delete button should be fairly straightforward. But we've written our on selection set selection model for our item, where whatever is selected, whatever is checked, will when the selection state of one or multiple rows changes, there's this callback that occurs. And we've just said whatever is selected, whatever item is chosen, set the selection model to that item. And so that's just going to stash it there to selection model. Now we're going to use that selection model. And we're going to actually be able to do some stuff with it. So whatever is checked, we're going to be able to do some things with it. So let's go ahead and add our const delete data button. And this is going to be an arrow function. It doesn't take anything in. We're going to just take server calls dot delete, and we're going to pass in the selection model. And that's because when we are using this, again, the thing we're getting back is the ID in particular. Let's see. Yeah, we're getting back that ID from our data grid. Some of that's just how the data grid ultimately ends up working. But so that's what's going to get used there. And this by itself will actually do the delete here. We're going to use this get data thing here, but we're not done quite with this yet. So we're going to get to this soon. And we're going to finish writing this in a moment. To do finish and test. Great, so we've got that there, and now we're going to go ahead and we're going to write that use get data hook. So we're actually going to make a new folder called custom hooks. Yep, so inside of source, new folder called custom hooks, and we're going to go here and we're going to make a new file, and this is going to be, whoops, what are we calling this? Fetch data to TSX. Sorry. Fetch data.tsx. Great. And now we're here. And how is this going to work? So a few things going on. We're going to discover a new hook called use effect. I'm going to show you a cool trick for that one. And this is not really a functional component, but I'm going to write it like one. Eventually. Thanks. And we're gonna write this a little different. Export here, export const, fetch data. I'm gonna actually call this use get data. A few things to note here, right? Man, this computer's sluggish. Are you turned on? Stop. Stop. Thank you. All right. So use get data, and this is standard practice. When we're writing a hook, look into my eyes. When we're writing a hook, we use at the beginning. So anytime when you're writing React code or reading React code and you see use in there, that means it's a hook. There's, I think, 11 hooks in React that come standard with their library. Other people have written libraries, so we used the use form hook earlier. That's someone else's hook for helping with the form, right? We're writing our own here, but again, if it's a use something or other and it's not in that standard set of 11 hooks, like I said, I might be off by a few numbers, but if it's not in that standard set of React hooks, then that is a user-defined hook, whether that's another company that did it, whether you wrote it yourself. Use is what we start with that. So, use get data, we're writing our own here. It doesn't take anything in, and we're not concerned about it returning HTML right now, or JSX, I guess. We're going to say const contact data and set data equals use state, and we're going to pass this in. This is a little bit of TypeScript stuff here, and essentially this allows us to use an array. Now it says, oh, I can't find this. Okay, and that's because we got it imported here. Use state. I don't know why you're being weird about this, but there's that. So that's cool. Now, state we've figured out pretty well, right? So there's going to be this default array, and this is the initial state is going to be empty like that, yeah, so that's cool. But the next thing we're going to end up doing is we're actually hardly returning anything, so I'm just going to get rid of that for right now, and actually that as well. And we're just going to pass an empty object, so that's fine. We're going to come back to that in a bit. But we're going to do some other data processing in the middle of this, right? So we've got our contact data and our set data. What does that mean? Well, the contact data is the thing that we're going to want to eventually return. And so we're going to say async function handle data fetch. And so this is going to be where we actually execute the fetching of our data from the server. So const result equals await server calls dot get. So again, this should go to the server and say, hey, what data do you have from our database? What's there, right? We're going to say that to result, and we're going to set the data to result, okay? And so again, this is going to set the state. So the contact data now is whatever the result of this server call is, okay? So we can call contact data somewhere else in here, and that's the data that exists. Now, we have to figure out a way of making this occur somewhere in our hook here. And essentially when we're writing custom hooks, usually that's some combination of existing hooks in a way that we can just reuse repeatedly. So I want you to think about it as like you write a function and you write another function and you put one of those functions in the other one, and then you call the one function and all the other ones happen because of that, which is like, it's just piping data. It's just same processes, just abstracting them away. Okay, that's all we're doing here. So what we're going to do here is we're going to use the use effect hook, which if you tab like that, it should automatically put it in there. Use effect, and we're going to put a callback in here where we're going to run the handle data fetch, and we're going to do an empty thing there. So a few things with use effect. Use effect is a little bit odd, frankly. And the syntax is what's odd about it. So if I had gotten rid of this, use effect would occur every single time that the component that it lives in, it changes, right? So this means that whatever we use get data in, which will be our data table, anytime that something on the page changes, right, we click on a box, this will refresh. If we uncheck a box, this function will occur. We don't want that to happen, right? Because otherwise this is going to happen constantly. It's going to be just getting data, getting data, getting data, getting data. And anytime we interact with our dashboard, something will change and it's going to rerun this use effect hook. That's a pain. So what we do instead is we write like this, and you just have an empty array at the end of this. This means, and you should probably write this down. This is going to be like these 3 examples that I'm putting here. Just write a comment and say this is what it does. Okay. With nothing there, it will occur every time that something changes. With just this here, it will occur on mount. So when the component, when the data table component comes into the world, when it is made into existence, right? Because again, React is generated JavaScript, okay? The JavaScript creates this stuff on the fly. When our component comes into existence in the virtual DOM, then this use effect hook will occur one time. We could also put component name here, and it would watch for changes on just that one component. And anytime that component changes, then this will occur again, right? We don't have this here, so it doesn't matter. But we could put other things in here, and if those things changed their state at all, we'd be able to track that. But as it is, we only want this to happen on mount, and what we're going to return is going to be a object, and we're going to, again, use destructuring to figure this out. But we're going to put contact data here, and get data is going to be handle data fetch, which means that this function is going to occur with whatever we name it somewhere else. And so if we come back here and we import that, use get data like that, this means that our get data function will make this particular function occur, which is just getting the data and then setting the data to that, right? But this means that the contact data now is connected, right? So rather than returning something directly, it ends up just getting set to contact data, and then we're just stashing that state out there. Hopefully that makes sense. I almost asked, does that make sense? And then I just looked at myself. But again, now this contact data is the same thing as our contact data here. We could have named it whatever we wanted to, it wouldn't matter. But we got this contact data here, now it exists, and so now we can continue our data table component here with our delete data function. Okay, so we got this, we got to finish this here. We made that component. If my computer will wake up today, I'm going to say get data, which is pretty simple. Great. So now that's getting used. So now that's happy too. And we can get rid of that, I think. Yep. Why are you so angry? Okay, it's mad about that. That's fine. We'll get there. Console.log, and we're going to pass in selection model, just so that we can see what this value is. And we're going to then put a selection model in there like that. Pretty straightforward. And then we're going to make it lag just for a second. Set timeout. And again, you don't have to leave this in. This is part of just me showing you some of what's going on. Window.location, no. Reload, and then we're gonna say 500 milliseconds, just half a second of hanging out. That's not a real word. Got that. Cool. And now we're gonna come down to our button for our delete button, and on click, we're gonna set this equal to delete data, and that should work. And that should go away, and everybody should be groovy. All right, and then for our update button, this one's gonna be a little bit different. We're gonna say on click equals, and actually what we want to do here is we're gonna put in handle open. And the reason for that is, again, we're going to be doing kind of the same process for updating or deleting the data. There's just this, or not from creating or updating the data. But when we're doing the update function, that's just because there is something held in the selection model, right? So this is, again, when we're checking off the boxes, the check boxes on our app. What we want to be able to do is take that, which IDs have been selected, and pass that in to our contact form and be able to target that. So again, that's where that ID is going to come from. Now we haven't piped that through yet. That has to come through the modal, right? And this means that our props here are actually not yet finished. And so we're going to go back to that. And it will be probably grouchy. Oh, my computer's decided to take a nap. That's cool. All right, so our props here. We're going to have an ID optional item here. And again, this was how we're going to just tell it whether or not to. That should work out. There we go. That's just one space. Cool. All right, so we got our ID here. That's very nice. Great. What are we going to do with it? That's a good question. Oh, we just passed it into our contact form. So this will be ID equals props.id. Okay, and now we got to use, so that's coming in there, nice. And we got to make sure that we're actually taking this in here. Okay, yep, there we are. So the ID is a string. So actually I can get rid of this now. And it should be more or less happy, except for the fact that this is not required. So it's like, oh, I don't know if that's going to exist. Props.open is a Boolean. It should be, what did I do wrong here? I think it's because I'm still not passing anything into here. So it's like, that doesn't have to be, that's what it is. Oh, hold on. Yeah, there's where that's coming from. So this could be a string, or it could be undefined. So again, the problem here is that because I made this optional, is that this is just shorthand for saying this could either be a string, or it could be undefined. This is actually in TypeScript, this is what's called a union. where it could be either of these things, right? So it's going to say if it exists, make it be a string, otherwise make it undefined. Problem is that TypeScript hates undefined data types. That's the entire reason TypeScript exists, is to make sure that you never accidentally get undefined for something. And then that would be a problem. So what we've done is, again, we've changed the behavior of this based on whether or not the ID exists, right? Because if it does exist, then it's going to update. Otherwise, it's just going to create a new user, right? Anyways, so that's kind of what's going on there. But we've piped that in there, but we are still not. If I get rid of this, somebody else will be mad, right? Because data table does not have any way of passing that ID in. So if we come here, actually, let's just as a little game, let's just temporarily ensure that this comes through. So we've got our data table here. We got this modal, and you can see that now it's mad. Property ID is missing in type open boolean on close void, but required in type props. So again, what's happening is here, this modal is being fed these things. It says, oh, I've gotten open and I've gotten on close, but I don't have any ID here. And so what we can do, if I can go back to my original here to make sure that I'm doing the right thing, which I know what I'm doing, it's not a big of a deal, but we can say ID equals, I'm going to pass in selection model, which is great, but we're still going to have a bit of concern because we don't, this is any, and I believe, yeah, this is where we actually set that to be any. And so I guess it really should be string, but that's okay. But yeah, so we've got that here. We are going to make that optional coming from our modal. It's not going to break in the meantime, but it will potentially have issues later. But yeah, so hopefully that makes sense with the types and making sure that we're actually passing down the things that we say we're going to pass down. That's all groovy. Again, the fact that the reason that we're allowed to make these optional is because we made it optional here, and it's all basing its behavior on whether or not that ID exists. If it doesn't exist, this will actually come out. ID will be undefined when we do on submit, and that should be fairly transparent and fairly obvious. I think we're getting pretty close. Let's try and run this and just see if anything's particularly obviously missing. Okay, so we have data here. That's good. I'm going to delete this. Okay, so you saw the ID showed up and can't ran away. I'm going to make... Aha! All right, we have a problem. We have a problem! It's because we're not done yet. So again, this is just error reading. We got plenty of errors here. But it says we don't have any React Redux context. We don't have any... We're missing provider. What does this mean? Above error occurred in contact form, right? And so you can trace this back. You can look back and see what this actually means. But it could not find the context, and please ensure the component is wrapped in a provider. Oh, that was not what I meant to click on, but this is kind of cool that it exists. So these are all of our functions. This is how React compiles. This is what it looks like after you're done. And this is why it runs so fast, is we didn't have to write any of that, because that's a lot of code. Look, that's 12,000 lines of code. Oofta! We're at 29,000. Actually, I think this is just all of React, to be completely honest with you. I think this is just the entirety. This is not our compiled version. This is just how React works. It is! I was right. Delightful. Anyways, if you ever want to read React source code, it's right there. It's a lot easier to read it on GitHub, but whatever, you know. But what we're dealing with is the provider. And so that's because we did not, so again, what we need to do, come back here, right? Redux is right here. And again, part of what we're doing here is allowing things like these components to kind of like talk to each other. We're allowing them to talk to kind of a centralized logic here with Redux. So Redux allows us to, Redux goes in between these, and it comes here and allows us to kind of have a more organized conversation with our API, right? And what we failed to do was to actually do this part, right? So we got it all set up for these to talk to somewhere else, but we never actually set up the store for everyone else to kind of talk to that temporary state on their own. And so that's what we're going to do next. And you're probably going, oh, not more Redux. This part's easy. We're actually going to go to our app.tsx. Bonk, 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 bonk. Oh, interesting. I wrote this differently than last time, but that should be fine. Cool. So what we're going to do here, and this really is all we're going to end up having to do, is import provider. I'm a provider from React Redux. Like that. And then we're going to need to actually import our store. Because again, our store is this thing right here. This is where, or actually this in particular in our diagram is our store. And if we go back to this, Redux core, not those, not those, not those, not those. Oh no. Oh no. Create a Redux store, right? So we've made this file called the store. Again, essentially a store is going to be create the Redux state slice, we know this stuff. Add the slice reducers to the store. Again, this is all how that logic gets processed. But then we want to use it in React components. We want to actually be able to access it. One more step, maybe. Provide the store. There we go. So provide the Redux store to React. Once the store is created, which again, think of it as like a temporary database, right? Or just a place to stash state. In the same way that we use state and kind of process that data through, it's the exact same thing, just on a bigger level. And the more that you code, the more, look at me, the more that you code, the more you'll start to notice these patterns, right? Like, oh, I'm frequently updating something, changing what that thing is, and then viewing it some way. And then I have an interaction that makes a copy that's new and changed, and then it changes the way it looks, right? So you say, oh, well, that's how state works. That's how Redux works. There's types of databases that actually work this way, so on and so forth, right? And it's a really good pattern, and there's a reason it's a good pattern. It's because it's simple and it works well. It's just that sometimes the way that we have to do that on a bigger app looks more complicated because we just have more things moving around. But this right here is our documentation. How would we put a store in here? Well, if you want the store to be available to your app, you use this provider component from React Redux, and you wrap your app inside of it. And that's what we're doing here. Also, this is, I think, an old version of React right here. You see React DOM.render, and ours is a little bit different. If we go to main.tsx, we've got create root. Ours looks, you notice how that's a little different? That actually is one of the main differences between React 17 and React 18, which is what you're learning now. And it also was a breaking change. So a lot of the MUI type stuff, a lot of the extra tools, the data table, things like that, I had to redo a whole bunch of those for this version of the application because they're different than before. All right, so what we're gonna do, we've got our provider imported now. And again, this is how you read documentation. You look at this, you're like, oh, okay, I see I have to do a wrapper and I have to import the store itself, which again, keep in mind that the store right here is this stuff. So this is actually where the reducer ends up sending all of these is where they end up existing. And some of this is, again, just magic. It's just the syntax. It's just how you write their stuff. And again, if you go back and read the documentation, it'll make a lot more sense to you. But you just say, I just have to write it this way, and that is what it is. But we're going to go back to our app. There it is. And we're going to wrap our routes inside of this. Now, the nav bar, you're like, well, what about the nav bar? What if I want the nav bar to have access to the store? I need to ask you a question. Why does the nav bar need to be able to see this data? It doesn't matter. It doesn't care. The nav bar is going to be the same either way. And so what we're going to do is we're going to highlight all this routes section. We're going to do Command or Control Shift P. And we'll have this little pop down thing. Yours might look a little different than mine. You can search for these. I end up reloading my window pretty frequently. It just refreshes the page, especially when you have like lines like this where you're like, I'm pretty sure this is fine. Or if you're like, I think VS Code is actually what's bugging out here because I guarantee I'm correct. And I have lost my mind over this before. And then every time once in a while, you just have to actually just refresh the page, which is that one, developer reload window. But Emmet wrap with abbreviation, and I'm going to put in provider like that. Press enter, and now that exists, and that's cool. And it's saying, oh no, the property store is missing. I need a store. I need something to actually allow our routes to access. And so we just say store equals store. And now it's mad because it's like, I don't know where that is. I don't know where that is. packages, and so we have to import the store as well. Store. Oh, that needs to be in these. Come on, stop recompiling and just work with me here. No. About like that. And now it should work. And now we'll be happy. And oh, looks like it's happy. Cool. We'll find out how happy it is. Back here. No. Back here. Refresh this page here. Seems pretty groovy so far. And I can click on T2, click update, and we have a pop-up, right? So this is good. This is so far, this is good. And you'll notice again, like that background, the data table disappeared. That's fine. But now I can click here and I can say, Brandon, my email will be codealong@ct.com. And then my phone number is going to be 546-546-546, whatever. And my chair is my address. I click submit. We notice that those things show up, and there it is. I got added to the database, or actually I got updated over T2, which is pretty cool. And then I can probably create a new contact as well. Like that. So that's good. It didn't have an ID because, again, we told it to print the ID anyways. If you go back to our, I think our data table. No, it's our contact form. Yep, so that's what happened right there. The ID was blank. If you go back and look at what was there, the ID was blank. It took 1 second to reload. You can change how long, if we wanted this to last like longer. You said it's like 5 seconds or something absurd. Do this. So the ID shows up. There's nothing there. There's an object that came. That's from contact form TSX line 25. And so that's going to be this one that we updated something. But data.name, I guess we could probably put that in. It doesn't really matter, frankly. But now that exists as well. Apparently there was an error that did not actually add what we were hoping for. Let's see if we can see what the error is. Access to fetch has been blocked by CORS. Dun, dun, dun. That's a little spooky. I'm going to have some time messing around with that. All right, not going to lie. I'm able to update and delete and get all the data. I'm not able to create it right now, but some of that is I probably just need to restart my computer again. So if you're getting that error, it probably just means you need to restart your computer. That should be fine. Or I guess I could use a VPN to try and cheat my way around it, but I'm not gonna do that right now. Anyways, the code should all work. And like I said, there's just something I'll keep digging on this one. If I figure out what it is, then I'll let you know. But it really shouldn't. It's gonna be the exact same process. Again, we've got post here. I don't know. I'm just like checking if I like spelled everything right. But this is not even what's getting thrown. It's some other error, and so it's not a problem with my code here. But anyways, so that's basically it so far. We have a working app. We should be able to come here. So you got the phone book. You can pop this down, go to the dashboard. That looks nice. I can delete this if I want to. Easy enough. Now it's gone. So I'm not sure why it won't let me do this just yet, but it says it won't. It's gonna wait a long time because I changed the seconds to like 5. But what's funny is I can still modify this from the other app. Okay, this is hilarious. Now it's just mad about everything. I'm gonna go and actually restart the application in the cloud and make sure that works because it's having some issues with this URL specifically. CORS is a pain, frankly. It's a security thing. I guess I could go and change the actual code to just not use CORS, but that's extremely bad practice. For backend, if you're under the same issue, reach out to staff. We'll help you out. But again, I was literally creating contacts not half an hour ago. And so there's just something else funky going on with either the internet or the cloud provider I'm using. Anyways, and this is the other one. This is my main code that I was coding along with this whole time. So that's this so far. We are going to add authentication next using Firebase, and we're going to put the whole thing on, I think Netlify is probably what we're going to end up using. And that should be pretty easy, should be pretty fun. So we should have like maybe 2-ish, 3-ish videos left, and we'll be done with the whole thing, which should be pretty rad. See you there.